but you haven't got any reserve to call on. So in terms of, I would slightly disagree with you in terms of comparing it with the shop, because in terms of the shop, we set aside money in the budget to say that's what we were going to be putting towards the shop. We're not calling that from the general reserve. That's from the SIL funding. That's from other items that are reserve pots. Our general reserve, it's actually 3 months. Is it 3 or 4 months? But it's 4 months.
It calculates at 4 months at the moment,
yes.
but when we had the conversation before, we talked about 6 months. And we've said, and that...
And we could have, at the budget time, if we'd wished to, we could have set it at 6 months and put our precept up by more. But we decided at the budget meeting that we were going to go for the 4 months as an emergency fund, because generally we shouldn't... Normally you shouldn't have the sort of emergency that is going to cause us that sort of level of costing. It is going to be, by its definition, unusual or rare. It's what you wouldn't normally do is use your emergency reserve fund for something that is generally a sort of general piece of expenditure that you could have planned.
But the conversation we had when we did the budgeting on the document was that we had the reserve of 54 at that time, now 61 forecasted forward. You're talking about the reserve forecast with the Clark's gratuity, the SIL, the play reserve, Tony Hill's, ANPR, PWLP, which is now 11,000, was 5,000. So when we look at that, and we were having the conversation about other projects, we talked about not touching that, but now we're putting that into the shop. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do, what I'm saying is we are now setting ourselves a precedent that we, a few weeks ago, agreed we weren't going to do. Now, that's fine, as long as we agree to continue down that vein.
But you're mixing up reserves again.
I'm not mixing up the reserves. When we had the conversation, there was 54,000 sitting in the reserve.
But that was not sitting in the general reserve.
No, that was not
that
sitting in
was in
the
various
general
reserve pots.
Correct, and it came up in the budget. And when we had the conversation, I asked, can we move some of this reserve fund into the play park because we'd have 30 years? And it was agreed, no, because we need it for emergencies.
No, it was committed because we knew we were looking at the shop expenses.
So you're saying that members of the parish agreed to put the SIL fund in and all the other funds in here?
Yeah.
Were we asked?
Yes, we have been asked in the past. Because if we hadn't been putting that money in, we could never have continued with the project, because we knew it was going to need that sort of inclusion of some of that money to make the budget up.
So you're happy, and I'm not trying to challenge this,
yeah.
You're happy that at the end of committing 48,000 out of reserves, that we're going to be sitting on 21,000, that will be sitting in what you call general or emergency fund, and that gives us takes us back to 3 months, not 6 months, and we're happy with that.
No, again, just to be clear, the 7,000 is in our budget for this coming year for spending on potentially emergency projects. So that's in our current budget. That's not in the reserve, that's in the current budget.
Yeah.
We will have the 14,600 is sat in our general reserve, which is the bit that's based on the 4 months of expenditure. That is in effect, the rainy day fund. That if something unexpected crops up, we've got something we can put money into. But it would not be normal to commit that money to something that is general expenditure that we could plan for. It's generally is something that crops up with emergency. So if there was a major flood in the village and we had to do something to deal with it, that's the sort of thing that you take that funding out of.
So
planning for the play park, to be honest, is probably not where you would, because you would be putting money into
Agreed.
A fund for that.
Agreed. But the play park now has a danger item on it. And according to the report, they're now looking at getting to a point where they're going to condemn it. Part of the shop premise is that we use the play park to bring people in so that they use the shop. So we need to look at that. That's the principle I'm trying to get to. And the second one is when we talk about flood, do you mean like we've had when the 2 councillors took out Saturday night and all day Sunday digging trenches, when we now need to get a contractor in to do that? And if we agreed in principle that that's what the £14,000 is for, then I have no problem. But when we first spoke about that, That's not the way it was put
Yeah.
forward.
It could well be used for that sort of thing, but what I would just, again, it's just a budgeting thing. Next year, obviously, we will need to have a reserve. So if we spent the reserve this year, we will have to make sure we replenish that reserve next year, and that will be in addition to the precept, because we will have spent more than we budgeted for because we've used our reserve. So as long as members bear in mind that that reserve has to be topped back up, yes, of course we can spend it on stuff that we need to for
So-
an emergency.
On that premise, we're about to commit £48,000 of our reserves.
Yeah.
On the grounds that if we have an emergency, we're going to have to put more precept out to the public next year.
Yeah, and that would be the normal. If you use reserves, you top them back up the following year. And historically, we have done that in the past. And on occasion when we've had to use reserves, because it's sometimes been a significant sum, we've topped it up over the next couple of years. We haven't gone back in one lump, we've done it over a period.
Does that, for councillors, does that make sense to everybody?
No.
Do you understand?
Oh, I understand.
Understand, okay.
It makes
That's fine.
sense, but I do think that in light of what's happened like before Christmas with the flooding, what's happened this last week, I think, as has been said, we are going to have to look at spending some of that, a big chunk, on some of the flooding, on the flood.
And that will be a matter that will come before the council.
I
You'll
realise
have to
that's
make your
not for
decision on that.
today's meeting.
Well,
But
it is,
it is.
because if we get rain tomorrow, which they're forecasting,
Well, David and I will go out at 11.
we've got 2 councillors that are giving up private time to stop houses from flooding. And we've got to do something about it. So, and I've had a complaint from a number of villages now about what are we doing about flooding at the top there and down that road. So it is an emergency, and there's a room on the agenda to have that conversation. What I'm trying to understand is we are committing a sizable sum of the reserves we've got, and we're about to walk into some sizable costs.
Can I just say that the SIL fund, you've got to remember what the SIL fund is for, and that would not cover us for doing flood protection work. The SIL fund is actually there for a community project.
At the parks.
So you can't actually use the SIL fund for anything you feel like. It's got to
But
be
you can
allocated.
use it for a play park.
We could do it for that, certainly, but
Okay.
we certainly couldn't use it for the
I
reserves.
thought
that
it was
you-
for maintenance.
No,
It's
it's
not
not.
for maintenance.
No.
It's for capital expenditure, not maintenance.
There's a whole list of things that qualify for SIL funding, and
So we paid for that zip wire that we voted on.
Yes,
in Shell.
it's a great pity that the SIL grant funding is shown as a reserve. It should be, if you like, monies received or grants received.
But
Yeah.
Colin, we have to show those reserves because they're not part of our
I'm
current
sorry.
budget. That's
I'm
why
sorry,
it's a reserve.
But I'm sorry, but we are merely councillors seeking to look into this.
Yeah.
It is
It's
a pity.
confusing. It is
It is
very,
confusing.
very confusing.
It is confused because
Yeah.
the reserves are really the smaller items there, which are held in reserve, and the SIL funding is something that we receive. It's a community infrastructure levy, right? We don't get
Yeah.
it from the public, we don't get it through our precept, it is given to us.
So we can't use that for emergency projects anyway then?
No, because as Bob says, it's for community infrastructure.
That's, yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. If that's said in black and white, so we can all understand that, then
But I think there's no doubt about it that we are committing all our funds to this project.
but we can't spend them on anything else anyway.
No,
No,
well,
well,
we
it's
can't
not.
do it.
As has been said, yes, you could spend it on new player equipment on the village green, but
Okay.
without being rude, we can spend it but once. So we obviously had discussions earlier about what was being proposed, and in fact we've had discussions saying that if we went down the route of going down with the shop and the toilet block being redone, then we would have to be careful with the rest of our budget to make sure that we were we kept within our funding. So I mean, I I'm struggling slightly to understand why it's suddenly an issue tonight as opposed to the last 2 or 3 meetings and when we were setting our budget. Because yes, we're at the final stage now of making a final decision, but we have had these figures in front of us for considerable time. Hold on, Colin, I've got Melina, and I've got Andy, and I've got Colin.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going Colin first.
No.
Right, for some of us, this actually has been an issue for a long time. And at one point, the shop cost and the toilet cost was going to be £185,000, and it's now an awful lot more than that. And we have never had a vote to say, this is the figures, let's go ahead, where everyone has voted in approval. And if I can just read something from our financial regulations, all borrowing shall be effected in the name of the council after obtaining any necessary borrowing approval. Any application for borrowing approval shall be approved by council as to terms and purpose. The application for borrowing approval and subsequent arrangements for the loan shall only be approved by full council.
Yeah.
You haven't had that.
Yes, we have.
Right.
Full council doesn't mean everyone votes for it. It means it comes to this meeting and we decide we're going to go for it as a majority, and that's
We've
what
addressed
happened.
all those criteria.
And we voted for
Those
the
have been-
contractor at the
yes,
last
yeah.
meeting, and we knew how much it was going to be.
And which is my point. I'm not raising this as a separate issue. I'm raising it as a point of principle. I think that we are going to be talking tonight, later in any other business, about the flood and the issues, and that we've got 2 councillors protecting property and we need to spend some money. We'll talk about what the council has done.
Yeah, I mean,
My principle on this, raising the question on it, is as long as we're all aware that we're about to commit a sizable chunk of money, that it makes us very restricted on what we can and can't spend on, and that's fine. My suggestion was that this leaves us now extremely tight on all our other projects. So play parks, land becoming available that we can purchase, which we've discussed in the past. We're going to have to find other ways of funding other activity. So in principle, what I'm trying to find out here is we agree that if we've got projects that are in emergency, we will go into the 14,000. We've put 7,000 aside for the Sunset Councils. There's 21 to spend. How we spend it's up to us. But we also agree that there needs to be some other fundraising activity because we are now very, very short of funds. If we get an overrun on the shop, and I know we've got this contract that says it's built to price, but there's also, I would no doubt there's going to be a force majeure in there. We have the Red Sea, there are going to be price increases in the market. Even if the builder is a very decent company, if he can't afford to build it, he won't build it. So there will be overrun costs, or there will be overrun in time. So we need to have reserves in there to protect this, and I'm just saying we're right up on the boundaries on this. We might have to go back to the village if we have an issue to raise extra funds to get this built.
To be frank, we can't. So we have set our precept for this coming year. That is the money we will receive this year.
Agreed?
We can set a higher precept next year if we wish to, but that won't come in until April, May of 2025. In terms of fundraising, that is not something that the parish council can get into. We can apply for grants, but we are not a fundraising body. There will be other bodies, I'm sure, in this parish that do fundraising, but it's not the role of the parish council to be putting on fundraisers for stuff. If individuals wish to do that and wish to do it for a project, that's up to them. But it's not the role of the parish council to be a fundraising body.
So as a parish council, we need to understand that we are tight in the extreme this year. So if we have a major issue, we've got 14 grand to spend. We have a county council which has already started to tell us that they're not going to do certain activities. We've had them out 3 times on the flood, 2 times on the flood, and they've done nothing. We're going to have to do something as a village to protect ourselves, and that means that that fund of 14,000, which is 3 months, will come under severe pressure, which means when I come right back to my first statement, when we sat down and talked about swing parks and things, we said we weren't going to touch that. At first we said 6 months, and now we've reduced it to 3 months. That's fine. So in principle, we're happy to go into that 3 months.
In principle, that will be a decision for the parish council members to make.
That's fine. So we've agreed in principle we will go in.
No,
It was
what we've said is
before.
you can do whatever comes forward as a project or an emergency thing. We'll have to justify why we should go into that money, and that will be for members to decide. But I can't say, I'm not going to say tonight that yes, we're going to spend it on that, because we don't know what we're talking about yet. We would have to see what the project is. We would also have to
Okay.
talk to people like the Internal Drainage Board. We would have to talk to the Highways Authority to make sure that we're not cutting across other people as well. And that would be a project we would put together. That's the same sort of thing that John Harper did years ago when he sorted out the bottom of Church Lane. By getting those people to work in partnership, it was delivered. I think we've got to be careful on any project that we do, that we are dealing with things that
But
are
in
our
fairness,
responsibility.
10 years ago we had a county council that had funds and wasn't going bankrupt and wasn't telling us that we're going to be picking up our own services.
Primarily it was
We're in a
the
different world.
primarily it was the Internal Drainage Board and Wessex Water who helped fund the issues of flooding.
Both of which have been out and haven't done it. So, but that's a conversation we'll have later.
Absolutely.
The principle is, as councillors, we understand that we are now down to the 3 months with £7,000 extra for emergency, which we put into the precept.
You're also down, again, just to be clear, you're down to the budget that we've set for this year. Now, we have set money in various budgets for doing stuff during the next 12 months. Members can choose not to spend that money on certain other things and transfer that to other spending should they wish to. We could, and again, it's up to us to make a decision, but there is money in the play park fund, £7,500.
I think we're
That
playing a
could
little
be
bit
used.
with words here. We've agreed the budget,
Yeah.
no problem. We agreed the precept, no problem. We've agreed the reserves forecast and whether we're going to spend it, not a problem. I think most people didn't understand that we were going to be dropping down to that 3 months and only have the other £7,000 that we budgeted for, because we've always been quite lucrative and conservative as a parish council. And certainly councillors, when they're asking me, didn't understand that we were going down to that level and away. Most parish councillors think there's still £30,000 to £60,000 in there. Whether they've read the numbers is not. But tonight what we've confirmed is we will be going down to 3 months reserves with the £7,000 committed for emergencies and no other reserves around that, providing we stick to budget.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Colin.
I can understand Andy's remarks because this is a serious project. I think again though I look at the bigger picture, and I've got to look at the bigger picture because if I don't look at the bigger picture I get all depressed. But we are getting rid of an eyesore in the toilet block. We are replacing it with, and the eyesore is costing us money, it's not functioning, it's not worth the land upon which it sits. So we are gaining an advantage, and if you like, we're using our SIL grant funding for that in particular in my book. The shop is okay, a big expenditure. We've got the funding in place. It is for the bigger picture and the future of the village being a proper asset. So in one respect I realise it's all very tight, but on the other side of the coin you've got to go for it. But I think in going for it we need to be very mindful that we are stretching ourselves to the limit. We really are, because we don't know what might come. But it will be a fixed price contract. It will be there may well be a provision, well there are provisions in the contract for variations, but only if they are legitimate variations. In other words, the builder can't say, oh, I've had to do this, therefore I want a variation. That does not work. That's why we're employing an architect to supervise the works. So the job will be managed very tightly financially, and you've already had assurances of the builder in terms of his suitability, his financial security, his references from previous projects. I think he looks like a pretty good guy, but the important thing is we just need to establish we are doing this on a bit of a tightrope. But I think if we can see it through, if you leave it, it's going to cost you more. There's no doubt about that. It's going to cost you 10% more in 12 months' time, and that puts it right out of the ballpark. So as long as we enter it and we control it minutely, and we also take a proper record or proper assessment of our budgets regularly to make sure that what we're agreeing to spend, because we do spend money on things sometimes, maybe that we rob Peter to pay Paul. We're not going to be able to do that. Or we're going to have to be very careful how we do it. So all I'm saying is that's where we are, and that's what we should bear in mind when we go forward with this project.
Yeah. Completely agree. Not against us doing this. Just want to make sure that we're all very, very happy with the numbers. And the second piece, we're about to sign an agreement with the shop on lease. And we're going to be relying heavily on their 25,000 contribution and their £2,500 in their rental for the build. So in the lease agreement, are we happy that we've got that agreed that they're going to pay that £25,000? And are we happy, because I know we've got individuals that sit on the shop, are we happy that those funds are available to us so that we don't have to take any more funds out of any of their projects, should it not be?
So in terms of the contribution from the shop, the Section 14, they will be paying the Section 14 elements direct to the builder. It will not be money coming to us.
Yes.
Within the document that we're in front of us today, it talks about 21,000 plus the solar panels, because it was 20.
Yeah.
It would include
£4,000 or something for the yeah.
So that is within the document that we're putting here.
Yeah.
The purpose of this document is it is not a lease, as you're aware. I mean, it is the intent to do the lease. We've tried to build into there the detail that gives us a good starting point for that lease. But potentially, what we always asked as a parish was we wanted to have that level of commitment to show that both sides were committed to this project. We weren't building something that then wasn't going to be needed. And I think that the commitment on this is an expression, as I say, of commitment and goodwill from both sides to say, yes, this is the project that we want to take forward. And obviously we will have to have full negotiations and a proper legal lease drawn up before they take possession of the property. But this sets the framework.
That they have met that contingent of the 21,000, and if
they've
done their Section 14 stuff.
Yes. Fine. Thank you.
I was just going to say on that Section 14, they obviously need to be invoiced by the contractor in order to claim their own VAT back.
Exactly.
So would it be a good idea to put, because I see here in this draft lease, it says these items to be paid direct to the contractor. Should it actually say in the lease that the contractor should invoice the shop, and then that would cover what Andy just said, that we would then not then have any liability for those Section 14 items, so anybody who was concerned about that wouldn't need to worry, because it's between the contractor and the shop for those items.
Go on.
I think that's more or less implied, Amanda, under item 2.
It doesn't actually say that though, it says these items to be paid direct to the contractor.
But I think,
so it doesn't
Amanda,
say
that's where the element of goodwill comes in here. I think we all know, we have the commitment that that's what the shop wanted to do. We will have a full legal lease that will be in place for the actual rental of the shop going forward. this is setting the framework as how we're doing it, and it is, I think it is clear within there that they are responsible for paying for the Section 14, and they will do that direct with the builder. We have cleared it with the VAT advisor that is permissible, and we have cleared it with the builder that he would be prepared to deal with that, and we've heard from the shop that they are prepared to do that. So I think there's only so much that you can necessarily put in black and white. Andy?
There is, but the shop is a limited company, so we can actually put the burden on the shop. It's a limited company, so if it's signed by one of its executives, we can put the burden on the shop. The reason I'm saying is if that's a major part of it. Sorry?
They have accepted that burden.
No, they've accepted it verbally. I'm saying, that, are we going to make that a condition for us moving forward? Because if it's not paid, we've got to find £21,000 to continue the project.
Well, it does say the tenant agrees to fund the items of the building
does.
contract, including in section 14.
And I'm saying when we put the agreement together as a formal document, that will be a gate that has to be cleared.
It probably won't be in the formal lease, because these items will have been dispensed with by the time the building is built and the lease will be issued. The final lease won't be issued until the building is complete.
You're not doubting the integrity of individuals. You're about to spend £200,000 plus. Of that, 10% of it, 8% of it, is based on goodwill of somebody paying. And I'm just saying that if we're going into legal agreements on tenancies, if we're going into legal contracts with builders, we need to have a legal contract on the 21,000 being paid, or we will not pursue the project.
To be frank, Andy, if I can be brutally honest, if you wish to have a legal agreement before we can move ahead on this, we will not end up moving ahead on this. Timescale is, we have to make a decision tonight whether we are prepared to go ahead on the basis of what's in front of you. Because if we don't, our loan expires at the end of February. And then once we lose the 160,000, the whole project ends.
So just on that, so you're saying to the council that we've got to spend a time frame. Well, we can't guarantee a £21,000 payment. How do we have a contingency for that? Do we have reserves to cover it if it's not covered by the shop? What's our contingency?
But we have the commitment from the shop that they are going to do that.
You have an agreement in verbal. You do not have a commitment.
And they will be signing this document. If we choose to sign this document tonight, the shop will be signing it with us tonight as their commitment to this project and to that clause 2.
And you're happy to that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you're not adamant, then you will need to make your decision tonight on your own basis. But if we wish this project to go ahead, in all reality, we are where we are at tonight's meeting, and that is something that needs to be for members to decide. Melina?
Item 5 on this says rent commencement date will be the first day on which the tenant trades from the property.
Yep.
I thought we were going to give them a fixed rent-free period, because there's no mention of this. So, in theory, they could take on the lease, never trade, never pay any rent for 5 years.
No, they couldn't, because they run out of... They're out of the porta cabin.
Why would they?
So what's the purpose of them doing that, Melina?
I'm not saying they're going to.
Why would they?
I'm not saying they're going to, but according
So
to this,
tomorrow
they could.
Yeah, but the building could be hit by an asteroid tomorrow. So,
Well, then you claim off your insurance.
I mean, we've got to be... I think that we have to, as a council, decide on the level of benefit and risk that is in front of us. What we have attempted to achieve with the document that we have today is a commitment from both sides in order to move this project forward. Ultimately, that's a decision that members will have to make. But I'm not going to try and force members to do what they don't want to do. Ultimately, it's up to each councillor to decide whether they think the benefit that is accruable to the village from the development of the refurbishment of the toilets, the provision of a shop and the maintenance of a shop within our village is of sufficient benefit to take a calculated risk in terms of what we have in front of us today, and that's the decision that we will have to make. Melina?
When will we actually be getting something that has been drawn up by the lawyers?
The
'Cause
lease,
I don't think we should be even signing this.
No.
It's got so many holes in it, it's like
No,
Swiss cheese.
No, there aren't any holes. Let's get this in perspective. This is merely, if you like, exchange of letters between two parties agreeing that what will happen while the building is being built, and then what will happen when it's built and handed over. It is not a formal lease. That will be, as we've tried to explain, drawn up by hopefully our lawyers, who will draw up that lease, because that's who should be drawing it up, because we are the landlord and the landlord should issue the lease. This is merely an exchange of letters, an undertaking that both parties will be, if you like, guided by. Okay?
and
But this is the document upon which we're going to actually take that loan for £160,000. And once we take it, we've taken it. You can't. And we have no legal documents.
Yes, we do. We have this letter or exchange, a letter of understanding.
Has a lawyer looked over this at all?
we agreed, if you remember back when we were first talking about doing this, that we wanted to have a commitment from the shop before we signed off on the project. That is what this delivers. This is a
Charles
commitment.
Fleming was supposed to be working on that a year ago.
Yeah, and they have not delivered anything that is of use in terms of taking this thing forward. So we have in front of us a document that has been drawn up for both parties to set a framework that we can work to in terms of drawing up the formal lease. My hope would be, should we go ahead with this, that we will have, this would form the basis of what would be submitted to our lawyers for both sets of solicitors to work with representatives of the council and with representatives of the shop to draw up a full proper lease to go into place. But that will only kick in when occupation is taken of the shop, and that's what we have to work towards in terms of the actual delivery of a full lease.
So Charles Fleming hasn't looked over this document.
Not this document, no.
You mentioned, Melina, about a year ago, Charles Fleming looking at us a year ago. You've got to remember that a year ago we only just started the problems with the national grid, and that put everything on hold. Everything stopped.
No, it didn't really. It didn't really interfere with this.
He
could have been working on the pre-lease agreement.
But he didn't.
No, but he should have, because he was asked to do that a year ago.
Because a year ago there was a question mark as whether we'd ever go ahead on the project or not. Because of the national grid.
Right, so this is the document we've got. This is what we've been asked to look at and agree on tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so basically, if we can agree on this document, then we're all good in the hood, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So there's a couple of things here that I was going to say. There's one thing at the top. I think it looks like that we're renting the whole of the lot. In number 1, it says we're building all this. And it doesn't actually say that they're renting the shop bit. Now that may be blatantly obvious, but I don't know if it ought to just say that. If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Just pointing it out. Are they planning to rent the whole of the toilets?
I mean, to be honest,
I'm saying
I'm
it's
not
fine
trying
if it
to be
doesn't matter, but
difficult, but we have. We can pick through every clause of this if we wish to. We tonight, if we are going to move ahead, we have to sign this and the shop have to sign this. The shop have seen the document as was submitted to them, which is the same document that you've got. If we make multiple changes to that, then we might make changes that then are not acceptable to the shop. We don't know that, so they will have to take the document away to consult with their committee and then come back to us.
okay, it's just difficult because we've only just seen this, so it's a bit tricky to just to go through it. Because I just said it may not matter that it doesn't actually specifically say we're only renting the
It
shop.
does. There should be a plan attached to this.
There will be a plan attached to the lease.
Yes, because this isn't an actual lease.
This is an agreement of intent to enter a lease. This is not a lease. We are not expecting everything to be in here. This, as I've tried to say, is a framework for us to work from to devise the lease. It sets down for both parties the parameters in which we are going to be operating. There will have to be further negotiations between the shop and the parish council in terms of the detail of the lease and the plans that are attached to it and the red line drawings. All of that will have to be attached to the lease when it comes forward.
So this is just basically saying, we're happy, you're happy, we'll go ahead.
This is both parties saying they are committed to the project and they want to go ahead, and this is the basis of the progress that they can make together. Colin?
One question, and then I haven't had any meetings with the shop committee. I haven't seen any of their accounts, but can you assure us that they have the funds to carry out Section 14 works?
Does someone from the shop wish to answer that? Because I think that's the safest thing to do.
Well, in essence, yes, we do have the funds. But we will have to raise some more money to fit the shop out, having paid off this section. So we do have the funds now, but we don't want to spend all of those on Section 14. We intend to raise money in the meanwhile.
So what you're saying is, you've got money, but you've got the money for Section 14, but you haven't got the money to actually fit the shop out.
And trade.
Well, no, that's not what he said. So you haven't got the money to fit the shop out.
We have a budget which requires additional funds to be raised in between now and when we start to trade.
Can you give us an indication of how much, David?
Well, we're going to try and raise £60,000, but that's in order to not run our reserves out completely.
And obviously, in terms of the fundraising for the shop, they've got that will be up to them to sort in terms of they've got fundraising, they would have grant applications, and they would potentially have shareholder issues. That's something that the shop will have to do, because obviously they need to raise that money in order to move into the premises and operating. Yes, please, at the back.
Sorry, so I'm Michelle on the shop committee. Just to probably clarify on what David said, so we absolutely have the money for Section 14 items. Okay, just for absolute clarity. We have options in terms of the shop fitting, so we could have really swanky flooring or some okay flooring. We have options within that, so our premium product in terms of shop fitting, we would need to budget, we would need to get some more fundraising done. However, if the shop was available tomorrow, we could use the shelves that we've got and go ahead. So I think, yes, we will be entering into a fundraising stage. That would get us more than we currently have. Could we trade from tomorrow? Yes, because we're already trading.
Thank you, Chris.
Does that provide the clarity that's required?
Colin?
Having that form of assurance that they have the money to provide Section 14 costs, and having had the debate, I would propose that that we enter into this agreement with the shop and get on with it. Albeit we've thoroughly discussed the importance of the project tonight, both in terms of the project and its financing. We're in this position and we're not going to go forward unless we sign this agreement. That's my proposal.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any other comments? All those in favour then that we go ahead and sign this, please show. Any against, please show. That is clearly carried. So what I will do at that point, if members are happy, is I will just briefly suspend the meeting so I can sign the document in front of everybody and they can see me do that. So let's do that then.
So each of the parties will sign the document, and I will also add an adjunct to it to say that I witnessed the discussion and the signing as a proper officer of the council, which we're legally bound to do. So
That's the 21st.
It would be worth noting also in the minutes that the council are concerned, not concerned, the council have raised the issue of the 21,000 as a primary stepping stone.
did you raise that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I can possibly ask. I'll come down there Dave, to say you what use a sign print on a and again dated just underneath.
And if it's any consolation, I don't
Too late now, Colin. Too
I
late
don't want
now.
to keep the pen, so it's fine.
That's okay, because we'll
We
have
can't afford
a
it.
discount for the
Well, no, not that.
we'll have a disco on the village green. Is that what they call it these days?
Disco, is
Yeah.
a bit 70s,
I'm
isn't
not
it?
looking for it, but they're good.
Because then I want to give you a copy and well.
That's disco.
They're different, so.
Oh,
It's not called that.
It is not. Says,
No, it's abbreviated. That's wrong.
thank you.
we're calling it flaps.
Flaps.
The financial flaps. We are. We are. We can have a disco.
Right.
Straight in for flaps.
Members, if we can again reconvene and move on to the next item on that section. So I'm going to actually slightly tweak the order because we've got number 2 was the contractor and number 3 was talking about the loan, and I think it makes more sense actually to talk about the loan before we talk about the contractor. So the item 3 on the list was consider matters relating to the loan approval and approve a staged drawdown of funds to activate the loan process with the Public Works Loans Board. So again, as you've heard, we've had notification through from Department of Levelling Up that we can go ahead with the loan. We officially need to apply to Public Works Loans Board to have that facility, and then what we would like to ask is that you give authorisation to the clerk in conjunction with the Buildings Working Group to draw down those funds as required, so that we don't draw them down all in one go, we do it over a period so that we can use them as they're
Just
necessary.
be specific on that.
Yes.
There's basically 160,000 that we're drawing down. We're suggesting a 4-stage drawdown, 40,000, 40,000, 40,000, 40,000 over a period of probably about 20 weeks, something of that order. And bear in mind that the interest rate that will be charged on each of those drawdowns will be the interest rate that applies on the date that we draw it down. So for example, interest rate is just a little bit higher at the moment, they're 5.29 when I last looked. They have been down sort of around about the 5 mark. But, okay, the first drawdown might be 5.29, the second one might be lower. Okay, it'll be higher, but I think it's unlikely. It probably will be lower. So over the 4 drawdowns, there will be a varying interest rate over that time. So one will be one interest rate, and hopefully the one that we're drawing down first will be the only one that will be at that level. Anything beyond that should be below that. And we will draw that down. And of course the advantage of that drawing down gradually is that we won't be making payments at the start of the new financial year on the full amount. We'll only be making payments on the bit that we draw down. So we'll only be making, to start off with, we'll only be making payments on 4,000. Which, 40,000. So that's quite a significant change in where we budgeted as well. Coming to your figure about budgeting, Andy, because we're actually going to end up paying slightly less on interest in the full year than we would have done had we not have done it in that way. So there is an advantage in drawing down bit by bit. helps cash flow, it helps lots of things. So that's the way it would work, and I need basically this council to agree that we start the process of applying for the loan and drawing down the first 40,000 tranche of funds. That's what I need from the council.
Can you stick it somewhere to earn some interest or something? Or premium bonds?
We are getting interest on our saving, on our reserve.
Yeah, so if you stick it in premium bonds, you might win the $500,000, then we won't need to worry.
Problem is the banks don't pay you on your money as much as they charge you for your money.
No,
So
exactly.
you lose 1%, 2.5% on some places.
We get about 3.75 on our reserve account. So
Could ship it abroad.
That's a good idea.
Colin?
Mr Chairman, can I propose under item 3 that we give approval for the funds to commence to be drawn down to the Public Works Loan Board?
Is that enough in terms of the actual taking out
That's
the
all I
loan
need,
as well?
yeah.
That's what you need.
that's it,
Okay.
that's all I need.
Is that seconded? Amanda, thank you. All those in favour, please show. And any against, please show. Thank you. And then the final one in this section is just going back to the issue relating to bill tender contractor. As we reported, we've had all the checks come back on Ashley Baker in terms of finance and references. What we now need to do is to officially appoint Ashley Baker as contractor and give authorisation that we sign the JCT contract, which is the contract with the tenderer.
We have met him, by the way, so that's we met him last week. So that was quite an important part of the process, actually meeting the guy, and we found him very, very flexible, very accommodating.
Melina?
While we're talking about the builder, 2 meetings ago I inquired who had appointed the window fitter without getting 3 quotes, and I was told that no, I was wrong, he hadn't been appointed as the window fitter. And then I emailed you for clarification, Bob, and you said the builder will appoint the subcontractors.
Correct.
Why does Paul Tripp believe that he already has the contract for installing the windows?
I would have no idea why he has that, because he has not been notified by us. He has been, I would imagine he has been approached by our architect to get the ballpark figure that they were looking at for the thing, but
No, he definitely says he has the contract to install the windows.
well,
It's
unless Ashley has
Actually,
gone ahead and done that, that's up to him.
No,
as
no,
best,
it was before the
it's
Tender
nothing to
was
do with
finalised.
us. We have no
Okay.
contractual dealings with any of the suppliers. Our contract is with the builder. That's it. That's all.
Yeah,
our
no, but he
responsibility.
was actually named in the tender pack, if you remember, and I
Um,
just found that strange. But we'll see who gets the contract to do the windows.
Um, can we just move this on, please? Item 4.2, can I propose that the clerk and chairman be given authorisation to sign the JCT, I assume it's minor works contract, on behalf of the parish council?
I'll second it.
Thank you. If there's no other comments, all those in favour please show. And any against? And any abstentions? That's clearly carried. That brings us to the end of the shop building project section of the agenda, which then moves us on to item 5, which is we were asked to get quotes for a couple of items of
painting the playroom.
Thank you very much. So on the player equipment, we've had 2 quotes come through, which I managed to lose my copy, but if you want to give the detail, Owen.
Yeah, basically one quote we have is 40. I've only just seen this thing actually, so that's 1,400 and that's 1,500, isn't it?
Yes.
So that
Which
Andy
items?
Selway 15 and
Which
1,500.
items?
So it is all the painted items to be repainted. So yes, so it's not the silver slide. It is the springy. It's the seesaw. It's the climbing frame. It's the swings, and it's dealing with the monkey bars element of the trim trail. It's not doing the A-frame of the trim trail because that was the piece we were talking about having removed. So it's all the kit that is currently painted or stained is to be painted and stained. Colin?
Well, it's all very well getting a price, but what are they going to do? For instance, if you're just going to overpaint what's there, it's a waste of money. It needs to be properly sanded back, mechanically,
I'll read it out.
primed with proper primer and done correctly.
Let me just write it out.
And
Quote from
my
Andy.
second question is, where's the money coming from?
It was in our budget for this year.
It's in our budget for this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
The quote is thoroughly rub down and apply 1 coat of prime to bare areas, apply 2 coats of paint to all areas and 2 coats of stain. And I think it's the same on both of them actually. Yeah, they're the same quote effectively. One is for 1,500 and the other is 1,815. So it's about 300 difference, 315 difference.
Amanda?
Wasn't there something said about the chains on the swings? Do they have to have something done to them?
That wouldn't be done by a painter.
No, I realise that, but was that just what we were talking about playground maintenance?
Can we just, if we can stick with the quotes that we've got,
I was just
members
thinking
can decide whether to
Okay, I was just thinking are we running ahead a bit if it needs some sort of maintenance before it gets
I mean,
painted?
if members don't wish to go ahead with it, I'm quite happy not to, because, I mean, we were asked to do this several months ago. They've now come through with the quotes, that's why we've placed them in front of the council.
We have in our costs for, sorry to butt in, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
in our budgets for 23-24, where are you taking it from, Owen? Special projects?
Yes, it would be special projects.
We've got, in theory, you've got special projects of £5,000 in the budget, but you've got a forecast to March 24 of 8,694. So, have we got the money to do it? Where's the 8,000?
It could come under general maintenance.
General maintenance, we've already spent £2,000 of the budget.
What we've done,
2,700.
when Owen did the preparation for the budget, he forecast expenditure that was going forward for the rest of the year that was going to be spent in the final few months. That funding is
Something built into that.
Yes.
There is money built into that. But
Can you clarify, there is money built into it?
well, on the
does that
right hand
mean?
side there are some blue figures there, and I think
Yes.
you'll find there's something under general maintenance. I haven't got the document in front of me. My memory's pretty good, but not that good.
I mean, if members are that concerned about it, then we can pull it from the agenda tonight, not go ahead with it, and we can take it to our next meeting and have a discussion then. I mean, if that's what members wish to do.
I think some we've got to look at our budget from now on, and we've got to spend our money wisely. And one, there's the specification for the works, what they're going to do. We've already heard that, and who's going to do it. I don't know when it was done last time, but it certainly hasn't lasted that long.
6 years.
Okay. But what I don't understand is we had special projects of £5,000. So 1st of November we spent nothing, but all of a sudden, to the forecast to the year end on special projects, we've spent £8,694. 7,194 was spent in December. Well, I don't know what that was on, unless it was something that shouldn't have come underneath.
It was a large item. I mean, I'm just trying to think. I mean, you're throwing this at me, and I haven't actually got the figures in front
Colin,
of me.
I think that was bearing in mind that we were expecting these invoices to come through. We were also expecting the payment to be made in terms of the ANPR camera.
The ANPR, that was what it was, 7194, the ANPR camera.
So those were forecast expenditures that were coming through.
Yeah, but that shouldn't be in there because we've got the money for the
No,
because
£5,000.
that was in reserve, so
Colin,
it
you
was
have to
something
show
dealt with.
income, you have to show expenditure. You get a grant come in as we did for the ANPR, but we have to show it in expenditure somewhere. The auditor requires that.
Yeah, so
I can't just bury it.
what I'm trying to get at then, if I may, is the 8,694 is incorrect. It really is 8,694 less 7,194, which means that I've spent.
No, the 8,000 is the total of what is forecast to be spent across the rest of those months. So when
Sorry,
if I can, Colin, I'm not trying to be difficult.
Budget discussion.
No, hold on. When we had the discussion with the budget, Owen, in order to be able to work out what we're going to need for next year, to make the forecast of what we're expecting to spend in the final quarters of this year. So he had made those estimates based on the fact that we were expecting certain expenditures to come through, and that's why those forecast figures were in there, to try and make sure that when we were budgeting for next year's budget, we weren't forgetting the money that we were spending in this year's budget was working its way through, that was going to happen but hadn't already happened. That's why those figures were in there.
I was going to say, can I suggest that we do all the play equipment at the next meeting, have a real good look at the whole play situation?
Fine. In which case the other item there was the replacement plaque for the Knoll Jubilee stone, which we again were asked to go and get quotes for. I reported back to the previous meeting that we were waiting for final confirmation from the stonemasons. They've now come back and said that the proposal that they are suggesting is that we go with a replacement stone identical to what was there before, but they will build in effect a shuttering around it, fill behind it with a material that will then mean that it should not be as easy to break, because there won't be the gap between the two stones. The quote they have given for doing that is the same as the original price, which was £1,400 plus VAT. Again, it's up to members to decide whether they wish to go ahead with that as a project or not.
Well,
Can we afford it?
Mr. Chairman, it's got to go ahead. It's to an important. It's in recognition of lots of events that have gone on in the village. It was a project dealt with by former councillor Harper, and I just think this needs to be done. You can't leave it up there in its present state. It's an eyesore. It's dreadful.
Can I have a proposal then? Andy? That we go ahead. Okay, is that seconded?
Yeah.
Thank you. All those in support, please show. That's clearly carried unanimously, so that is item 5. Item 6 is matters of report, and just to remind councillors, this is an item where things can be reported. We cannot make decisions on items that are taken under this item because they have not been put on the agenda. Jane? Amanda?
Flooding.
In favour of or not?
Sorry.
What to do? Flooding. What to do?
Flooding considerations. Yes.
So that's going on the next agenda
Yes.
for flooding consideration.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Flats on the agenda.
Floods. Yeah.
Melina?
No.
Andy?
No, go ahead.
Tracy? David? Nothing? Colin? I've got nothing. Owen? Excellent. Thank you all very much. That concludes the business of tonight. We'll close the meeting at 8:15. Thank you very much.
Thank you by beer, Bob.
No escape.